Blow winds and crack your cheeks, rage, blow, you cataracts and hurricanos, spout till you have drenched our steeples. I tax you not, you elements, with unkindness. I never gave you a kingdom, called you children. You owe me no subscription. Unmasking, we find this strange man to not actually be Tony Stark under that, but Khan himself. He approaches and identifies Chekhov, though it's a much repeated continuity error in that Chekhov wasn't on the show when Space Seed was done. Walter Koenig has said that he believes Chekhov was a lower-ranking officer on board at the time who probably made Khan wait an extraordinarily long time to use the bathroom. I like that. So just picture this. The Enterprise corridor. Khan, the great Superman, standing in the hallway, repeatedly twisting and turning his legs with growing impatience, until finally Chekhov emerges and tells him it seems to be clogged and he needs to find another one on a different deck. This just makes this scene take on a whole new level of menace, doesn't it?
But you... I never forget a face. Mr. Jackal. Isn't it?
They explain the backstory of Khan and company and how they got exiled here, but also that SETI Alpha 6 just blew up one day. I really have no idea how that just happened. Best guess, Khan took his shirt off, and his genetically enhanced Latin body was just too much for it to take. Anyway, it's all too clear how he holds Kirk responsible for his exile and for never bothering to check up on his colony.
On Earth, 200 years ago, I was a prince.
And of course, what title was bestowed on Satan in Paradise Lost by his followers? That of Prince, of course, which further solidifies Khan's role in this. Darkened so, yet shone above them all the Archangel. But his face deep scars of thunder had entrenched, and care sat on his faded cheek. But under brows of dauntless courage and considerate pride, waiting revenge. Cruel is I, but cast signs of remorse and passion to behold the fellows of his crime. It's been stated that the film has been based somewhat on Moby Dick, but to be more accurate, it is that Moby Dick serves as an inspiration to our villain within the story. Its site there shows us that Khan has had little else to do but to read his few books and watch his wife and comrades perish here. If you've not read Moby Dick, you probably still know the basics, that a great white whale called Moby Dick bit off the leg of one Captain Ahab, and that Ahab seeks to now kill it in revenge. In the end, his obsession causes him to die and his vessel to be sunk. What you probably don't know is that this is one small part of the overall book, a minor backdrop at most throughout the first 80% of the novel, filled with reflections on whale anatomy, the historical facts and inferences about whales, and Ishmael talking on end about how much he loves to squeeze his hands in pools of sperm. It's probably no coincidence that one entire chapter of the novel is devoted just to Ishmael talking about how much he likes snuggling in bed next to his friend Queequeg, which is Polynesian for Harry Kim. But aside of the fact that Moby Dick is the first American classic disguised as a gay action piece, it provides us in Captain Ahab perhaps the most well-known archetype for vengeance in the modern era. Probably all modern instances of someone foolishly obsessed to the point of doom can be traced back to him in some way. So it's no surprise that Khan sees some of Ahab in himself. For throughout most of the book, Ahab's only real sign of caring more about his vengeance than his duty is when he refuses to put into shore to get supplies to repair barrels that are leaking whale oil. Otherwise, there's nothing out of sorts when the captain of a whaling ship hopes to kill a specific whale, when they're out here to kill whales after all, except to his loyal first mate, who would prefer to just get the job done and go home. Outside of that obsession, Ahab seems no worse than any other captain. Certainly better than the one described in the story within a story of the vessel called the Town Ho, whose captain can stop a mutiny in progress if he can only promise not to flog his men, but chooses to be stubborn instead. The significance of three of the great literary works on Khan's shelf, and that we've discussed so far, Moby Dick, King Lear, and Paradise Lost, is that each of them has a main character who could arguably be considered a tragic hero. King Lear, of course, was a strong warrior king who sought to enjoy his retirement, only to be stabbed in the back by his two-faced daughters, which must have reminded Khan what it was like to rise up and achieve so much only to have it snatched away and be reduced to nothing. Satan, who sought to usurp and become king, finds himself and his followers cast out, leading him to fight for whatever small chances of easing the suffering of him and his people No doubt reminds Khan of how he was banished here and continually surrounded by loyal followers suffering and dying because of his failed revolt. And like Ahab, Khan knows that every hardship he now suffers stems ultimately from his banishment by Kirk, every catastrophe a small reminder of that fact. It had not been very long prior to the Pequod's sailing from Nantucket that he had been found one night lying prone upon the ground and insensible. By some unknown and seemingly inexplicable, unimaginable casualty, his ivory limb having been so violently displaced that it had stakewise smitten and all but pierced his groin. Nor was it without extreme difficulty that the agonizing wound was entirely cured. Nor at the time had it failed to enter his monomaniac mind that all the anguish of that then present suffering was but the direct issue of a former woe. So the references to Moby Dick throughout the film are by Khan's own doing. For as a character who had been so high to be brought so low, had filled him with thoughts not just of reacquiring power, but of vengeance. It should be noted how Khan has twice fallen, first having lost his position of leadership when the tyrants were overthrown, and then to later and independently been banished here, in hell, as again shown by Khan's shelf with Dante's Inferno present. But while Khan fumes over Kirk, he pieces together that they came to this world thinking that it was Ceti Alpha 6, and he wants to know why. He picks Chekhov up by the conveniently placed "boss me around" handle, but still he refuses, so Khan takes out some larvae from the Ceti eel that he keeps as pets, which crawl into your ears and make you suggestible, along with giving the audience the heebie-jeebies. Meanwhile, the Enterprise bridge crew shows up to do an inspection, to see how well the trainees can handle things.
Well, I for one am glad to have you at the helm.
Scotty likes to take this pod all over the place, and then smiles at me as if daring me to say something. The trainees are all waiting for him, bright, shining little bastards. Throughout the scenes that follow, the continued ill-at-ease nature of Kirk is present, as he's surrounded by all these young faces, reminding him of how old he now feels, and at the same time filling him with nervousness at the thought of such inexperienced people being in control.
For everything, there is a first time, Lieutenant. Don't you agree, Admiral?
She looked like a woman to me. Yes. So Savick gets to take the ship out. Wait, we still haven't installed the radiation suits on board. Oh, never mind. I just hope you don't have any problems in the engine room. Meanwhile, as the scientists on Regula 1 finish up Genesis, someone is tuned in to the All Brainwash channel, where Chekhov is saying that they're going to come to pick up Genesis for testing, and says it was authorized by Kirk. Note the pause, by the way, in Chekhov stating that fact, as if he was trying not to say it. The scientists are all pissed off and go off to vent with a game of Magic the Gathering, when we see that, as expected, the Reliant is now under the command of Con-Noonian Pex, who can both take Genesis and draw Kirk into a track with a single movement. The scientists, meanwhile, debate the issue.
Starfleet has kept the peace for 100 years. I cannot and will not subscribe to your interpretation of this event.
So, we now know how long it's been since Archer was kicked upstairs to captaining a desk. Meanwhile, in Enterprise, Savick and Kirk share a turbolift, on which they discuss the Kobayashi Maru scenario, and Kirk evades answering of how he handled the test. After that, they get a message from Carol Marcus asking what the hell's going on, but it's quickly jammed, so Enterprise is sent to go check it out. As the ranking officer, Kirk should take command, but he's leery of taking it from Spock. Spock, of course, doesn't have a problem with it, though the last guy that had Kirk do this to him wound up being demoted and then turned into light beams by a bald robot girl. But of course, just because something happened to the last guy doesn't mean anything's going to happen to Spock in this movie. In fact, Spock's comment could be interpreted as eliminating TMP from continuity.
If I may be so bold, it was a mistake for you to accept promotion. Commanding a starship is your first best destiny.
Since he was already an admiral and commanding the Enterprise, then his promotion wouldn't have knocked him out of the chair a second time, would it? Thin, perhaps, but the reasoning for Threshold being written out of continuity is even thinner, and people want to believe that. Well, probably need to believe that. Spock insists that Kirk take command with the famous exchange.
Logic clearly dictates that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Or the one.
Meanwhile, Khan is met by Joachim, one of his followers, who suggests that they simply content themselves with their escape and continue their plot to reclaim glory, at which point Khan's motivation becomes transparent. He tasks me, he heaps me. I see in him outrageous strength, with an inscrutable malice sinewing it. That inscrutable thing is chiefly what I hate, and be the white whale agent or be the white whale principal, I will wreak that hate upon him.
He tasks me. He tasks me, and I shall have him.
Aye, aye, and I'll chase him around Good Hope, and round the Horn, and round the Norway Maelstrom, and round Perdition's flames before I give him up.
I'll chase him round the moons of Nibia, and round the Antares Maelstrom, and round Perdition's flames before I give him up.
By now they find the transmission to the station is no longer jammed, but there's no response. Deciding that keeping them in the dark is no longer an option, Kirk shares with Spock and Bones the tapes about Genesis. Not only a significant part of the plot, but another tie-in with Paradise Lost, which is an interpretation of the book of Genesis and speaks of how the world and life was formed. Genesis is terraforming on a planetary scale. It transforms dead worlds into ones capable of supporting life and introduces that life to them. Spock is obviously impressed and intrigued, but Bones is furious that if it was used on a populated planet, it would wipe everyone out. Its use here is a perfectly shaped puzzle piece. It provides a very useful and beneficial tool created by the peace-loving Federation that can with ease be used by evil men as an apocalyptic weapon. Its introduction by Michael Miner, the art director on the film, was invaluable.